Have you ever wondered why, despite all your efforts, certain emotions, reactions, or self-sabotaging patterns keep reappearing in your life? You may believe you've moved on, that the past is buried where it belongs, yet something invisible seems to tug at you, pulling you back into old fears, old doubts, old wounds. It shows up unexpectedly, like a shadow you thought you outran, but there it is again. Maybe it surfaces when you're on the verge of something new, a new opportunity, a new relationship, a fresh start. Instead of excitement, you feel paralyzed, not because of what lies ahead, but because of what still lingers behind. It's not uncommon to sense an emotional weight pressing against the edges of your joy or confidence, a hesitation that whispers, "Remember last time?" And suddenly you're not standing in the present anymore. You're pulled into a scene from years ago, a conversation, a mistake, a heartbreak, and you're reliving it without even realizing. Carl Jung believed that our past doesn't stay in the past, not unless we bring it to consciousness. What we refuse to confront doesn't disappear. It simply retreats into the unconscious and rules our life from the shadows. That's why we sometimes overreact to small things or shrink from moments that require courage. We think we're responding to the present, but in truth, we're reacting to ghosts. The boss's neutral comment feels like your father's disapproval. Your friend's silence feels like your mother's abandonment. A challenge feels like a threat because years ago you failed and the shame never left. Our minds, Jung said, are not neutral observers of the world. They are meaning-making machines. They filter reality through the lens of our unresolved experiences. We project our unhealed past onto our current relationships, opportunities, and identities, often without knowing. This is the danger of a past that hasn't been acknowledged. It becomes the author of a future that isn't truly ours. The future, in essence, becomes nothing more than the past repeating itself with different characters and different costumes. And so a life that could have been spontaneous and rich becomes scripted and predictable. You wake up each day with a sense that something is missing, that despite the changes around you, you're still the same within. Jung referred to this phenomenon as projection. It's when parts of ourselves, especially the painful, denied, or repressed ones, are unknowingly cast onto others. The world becomes a mirror, reflecting what we've hidden from ourselves. If you carry unhealed betrayal, you'll see disloyalty in every relationship. If you carry deep shame, even a compliment can feel like sarcasm. The outside world starts to resemble the storm raging quietly within. And in this cycle, the past dominates, not because it's more powerful, but because we haven't yet chosen to confront it with awareness. When you're unaware of your wounds, they don't heal, they rule. And as long as they rule, you live not as your current self, but as a reaction to the pain of who you once were. That's why Jung emphasized individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating the parts of ourselves we've lost, denied, or rejected. He believed that until we meet our unconscious face to face, we remain its puppet. The path to freedom then doesn't lie in ignoring the past or pretending it never happened. It lies in turning toward it with honesty, courage, and compassion. You have to become aware of when you're acting from memory instead of presence, when your response is disproportionate to the situation, when your fear outweighs the risk, when your sadness seems older than the moment. It's often a signal that you're still carrying something unfinished. That's the starting point. Not judgment, not shame, but curiosity. You begin to ask, what part of me is reacting right now? Is this fear really about this job interview, or is it about every time I was told I wasn't good enough? Is this jealousy really about this person, or is it about the way I felt invisible growing up? In those questions, you begin to break the spell. You loosen the grip of the past. You come back to now. This isn't easy work. It's not comfortable to revisit the places we've locked away, but it's far more painful to be unconsciously led by them for the rest of our lives. Jung didn't offer quick fixes, he offered deep insight. He believed that awareness itself is transformative. When we bring the unconscious into the light, it loses its power to control us. We stop being victims of our past and start becoming authors of our future. You deserve a life that isn't defined by what broke you, but by what you're now ready to create. And that begins by seeing clearly and compassionately where the past ends and where the real you begins. There are moments when someone says something simple, an offhand remark, a casual suggestion, and your chest tightens, your pulse quickens, and you feel as though you've been pushed into a memory, but no one else around you seems to notice anything unusual. That's because the world is responding to the now, but you are reacting to the then. This dissonance between what is and what was is the invisible thread that Jung spent his life studying. He saw that our past, especially the parts we haven't fully digested, replays in our present like background music we don't realize we're dancing to. That's where projection becomes more than just a psychological term. It becomes a way of living, unconsciously, automatically, protectively. We take the unresolved parts of ourselves and unconsciously place them onto others. If you've ever found yourself intensely disliking someone without a clear reason or being overly attached to someone you barely know, it's possible that projection is at work. We can't face something in ourselves, so we encounter it in others. And because we don't recognize it as our own, it seems foreign, threatening, or magnetic. But projection isn't only about blame, it's also how admiration works. We may idolize someone, not because of who they truly are, but because they seem to embody qualities we secretly long to claim. The confident speaker we envy may reflect the voice we've silenced. The compassionate friend we cling to might embody the gentleness we've denied ourselves. Jung believed that to reclaim these projections is to take back our wholeness. When you stop assigning your brilliance, or your wounds, to the outside world, you begin to live from the inside out. And yet, beneath projection lies something even more complex. The roles we've been playing for so long, we mistake them for our identity. Jung called this the persona, the socially acceptable version of ourselves we construct to meet expectations, win approval, avoid conflict. It starts in childhood. Be the good student, be the tough one, be the helper, the peacemaker, the achiever. We wear these roles like armor, and over time we forget we're wearing them. They become fused with our sense of self. But here's the quiet tragedy. Every time you adjust your truth to preserve a role, a piece of your inner voice goes unheard. You laugh when you want to cry. You agree when you long to dissent. You shine when all you want is to rest. And the world keeps applauding, unaware of the cost. Because the persona is often rewarded. The world loves a polished surface. But the soul doesn't thrive in pretense. It withers, it waits, it aches for air. The danger isn't in having a persona, it's in believing that's all you are. You're not just the role, but the role you play at work or at home or online. You are the silent questions that never get voiced. The longings that stir late at night, the tenderness you have tucked away because it felt inconvenient. Jung believed that integration, not perfection, is the goal of inner work. Not to destroy the persona, but to bring awareness to it, to ask gently but persistently, who am I when no one is watching? Who might I become if I allowed more of myself to be seen? Now, these questions aren't easily answered. They don't come with neat solutions, but they come with power. The kind that quietly rearranges the way you move through the world. When you begin to notice your projections and name your masks, you begin to make different choices, not all at once, but in small ways that add up. A pause before reacting, a moment of truth in a conversation, a quiet refusal to shrink. And when you do this, something remarkable happens. The people around you begin to look different, not because they've changed, but because you're no longer seeing them through the filter of your past. That critical boss is no longer your demanding parent. That distant friend isn't your childhood rejection. You start seeing others more clearly, and perhaps for the first time, you start seeing yourself. This clarity is hard-won. It asks for courage, but it also offers something priceless, not as a repetition of old patterns, but as a conscious author of your present. You begin to step into moments with awareness, no longer pulled by invisible strings. And that awareness, that conscious choice, is where the future begins. Think for a moment about the last time you felt overwhelmed by emotion, not just sadness or anger, but a confusing mixture you couldn't quite name. Maybe it happened during a disagreement, or while scrolling through someone's highlight reel on social media, or in a quiet moment when everything around you seemed fine, but inside, something wasn't. Often, we dismiss these moments, labeling them as overreactions or mood swings, but Jung would urge us to pause, because buried in that emotional intensity is a message, an echo from the past, playing through the events of the present. When the volume of your reaction doesn't match the situation, it's rarely about the moment itself. It's about a history that's been stirred, a teacher's tone that mirrored a childhood reprimand, a friend's silence that resembled abandonment. These are not coincidences. They are projections in motion. You're not only seeing the now, you're seeing a story that began long ago and never truly ended. And unless you bring that story to light, it will write itself into every chapter of your future. That's why self-awareness is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Becoming aware of your emotional triggers isn't about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming authorship. Jung believed that when we fail to recognize the unconscious forces within us, they rule us. But the moment we become conscious of them, we gain the power to choose differently. That moment doesn't look dramatic. It looks like a pause before speaking, a question before reacting, a breath before spiraling. It looks like grace. Still, awareness alone isn't enough. There's another layer we must confront: the shame that often binds us to our personas. For many of us, the mask wasn't chosen. It was built out of necessity, to survive in homes where emotions weren't welcome, to navigate cultures that equated vulnerability with weakness, to earn love in environments where approval was conditional. These masks were ingenious in their design. They protected us, but over time they also constrained us. Imagine a child who learned to be invisible to stay safe. That child grows into an adult who still hesitates to speak up in meetings, who downplays achievements, who fears being too much. Or think of someone who became the caretaker, always anticipating everyone's needs, never asking for anything. On the surface, they seem kind and reliable. Inside, they may feel resentful, unseen, and drained. These personas serve us until they don't. And when they begin to suffocate rather than shield, it's time to examine them. But here's the paradox. Dropping the mask feels like danger, not freedom. It triggers the very fear that created it. What if I'm rejected? What if I'm too much or not enough? These fears are ancient. Jung understood this deeply. He believed that we cannot simply rip off the persona. That would be cruel. Instead, we must approach it with curiosity. Gently ask, what part of me needed this mask? What was it protecting? And can I now offer that part of myself a safer, more authentic way to exist? This isn't about discarding the persona, but disidentifying from it, knowing that it's a part of you, not the whole of you. You gain the freedom to remove it, or at least loosen it, when you choose. That is the beginning of real self-expression. Not a performance, but a presence. Not perfection, but authenticity. And in this process, something else awaken. Compassion, not only for yourself, but for others. Because once you've seen your own projections, your own mask, your own wound. You begin to see them in others too. The person who seems cold might be guarding old hurt. The one who overachieves might be afraid to slow down and feel. The one who pushes you away might be terrified of being left. This doesn't excuse behavior, but it helps you respond with humanity instead of hostility. Jung called this the journey toward individuation, a lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, beyond roles, beyond wounds, beyond fear. It's not a destination, it's a deepening, a spiral inward and outward, where each layer brings you closer to your essence. And at the center of that spiral is your truth, not the story you were handed, but the one you are here to write. You might be wondering, how do I move from awareness to change? What does it look like to live beyond projection, beyond persona, beyond past scripts? The answer is found not in grand gestures, but in daily choices. It looks like naming your feelings instead of numbing them. It looks like asking yourself whether your fear is coming from the present moment or from an old wound that hasn't healed. It looks like telling the truth in small doses, even when your voice shakes. And it looks like offering yourself the same patience you give to those you love. Because healing isn't linear. You won't wake up one day and be completely free of your past. But you will notice that what once controlled you no longer defines you. The old voices grow quieter, the reactions grow softer, the space between stimulus and response grows wider. And in that space, something new can grow. That is the space where the future lives. You've made it this far. You've looked at your past with courage, seen the projections that shaped your perception, and glimpsed the masks you wear. That alone is a remarkable step. Most people spend a lifetime running from what you've chosen to face. But now comes the part Jung considered the most transformative. What you do with this awareness. Because insight without integration is like light without warmth. It shows you what's there, but doesn't change the temperature of your life. So how do you begin to integrate? How do you gently, honestly reshape the relationship you have with your past so it no longer dictates your future? Start small. Begin with attention. Attention is not the same as judgment. It's a kind of listening. Throughout your day, pause often and ask, is this reaction about the present, or am I responding to something older? You'll be surprised how often the present is simply a canvas for yesterday's colors. If you find yourself overreacting, withdrawing, craving validation, or feeling unseen, stop and feel into it. What's being touched inside you? What part of you feels threatened, unloved, or unseen? That part doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be seen. Jung believed that the unconscious reveals itself through emotional intensity. So rather than avoiding your triggers, get curious about, keep a journal, not to document your achievements, but to track your emotional weather. Write down what stirred you each day, what annoyed you, hurt you, thrilled you, then go a level deeper. What does this remind me of? Your history leaves clues in your nervous system, and writing is a way to decode them. Next, consider the personas you wear. What version of yourself do you present in different settings? The high achiever at work, the agreeable one in relationships, the independent one who never needs help. These personas helped you once, but ask yourself, are they helping you now? Do they feel tight, exhausting, performative? Who might you be without them? What might you say, feel, or ask for? You don't need to tear down your persona overnight. Just let light in through the crack. Try being 5% more honest with someone you trust. Try showing up without the need to impress. Try allowing someone to help you when you'd usually hide your struggle. These small rebellions against the mask begin to shift your inner world. They soften the need to perform. They create space for the real you to speak. And here's something else. Allow yourself to feel without fixing. One of the reasons we stay stuck in the past is that we haven't truly felt it. We've intellectualized it, minimized it, explained it, but we haven't sat with it. Healing isn't about understanding your wounds. It's about feeling the parts of you that were never given permission to feel, the grief you swallowed, the anger you buried, the loneliness you laughed away. Find a safe space, whether in solitude, in therapy, or with someone who holds space well, and feel what was never felt. Let it move through you, even if it makes no sense. Emotions don't always come with language. Sometimes they just need space to breathe. As you feel them, you're not getting stuck. You're getting free, because emotion that is felt fully does not stay stuck. It completes, it integrates. Now let's talk about choice. The most radical act of liberation is the choice to respond different, to not let the wounded parts of you drive the car, even if they're still in the back seat. You don't have to silence, but you don't have to obey them either. When your mind says you're not good enough, pause. Don't argue with it, just notice it. Then choose to act from your present self, the one who knows better, even if it still feels hard. That's what healing looks like, not feeling perfect, but choosing your future, even with trembling hand. You'll find that some days you fall back into old patterns. That's okay. This isn't a straight line. Some patterns are deeply woven into your nervous system. But every time you catch yourself, every time you choose presence over reaction, every time you create a tiny pause between your past and your next step, you are rewriting your future. That pause is sacred. That pause is where freedom begins. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What this means is that the past only dictates your future when you let it hide in the dark. The moment you shine a light through self-awareness, through honesty, through feelings, it doesn't disappear, but it no longer drives. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's about peeling away layers that were never really yours. It's about honoring the parts of you that tried to survive and giving them new ways to live. You are not here to repeat. You are here to transform. You might not change everything overnight, but every time you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it, every time you choose truth over performance, courage over avoidance, presence over projection, you're becoming someone more whole. You're becoming someone more you. And here's the beautiful part. When you begin to heal, you stop passing on what hurt you. You become the place where the cycle ends. You speak differently. You love differently. You parent, partner, and lead differently. You write a new script, not just for yourself, but for everyone you touch. That's how healing becomes legacy. So as this journey draws to a close, remember this: your past happened, yes, but it does not own you. It shaped you, but it does not define you. The future is not written in the ink of what was. It is shaped in the choices you make now, in the truth you're willing to feel, in the love you're willing to receive, in the freedom you're willing to claim. Take a deep breath. Exhale the roles you no longer need to play. And with each new day, step into the life that waits, not behind you, but ahead, because you are not your past. You are the author of what comes next, and the next chapter is yours who write.